See, my guru, Professor Sharma, always say that for an academic, there are basically 4 jobs. First, of course, most primary job is teaching. No compromises as far as teaching is concerned. Second is research. Now, why research? Because whatever new things which you learn in research helps you in teaching your students the latest and the better, as a result of which you are training students with the latest of the technologies. That's second. So research not only helps you in terms of growing and improving your knowledge base and skill base, but it also helps teaching. Third, of course, is industrial interaction. Why industrial interaction? Because then you are in a position to identify the relevant topics on which you can carry out research, and then that also helps you in teaching, because if your students carry out a project which is industrially relevant, he or she is going to benefit. So having industrial contacts and industrial interaction helps you in identifying the research area. And fourth activity is scholarly writing. You all know, those who have published and are attempting to publish, there is always a page restriction, word restriction on the publications. If there were no restrictions, everybody will be writing stories, but you can't. And that also helps you in teaching. Why? You are in a position to convince people with the appropriate words, with the appropriate sentences, in an appropriate, concise fashion. So you want to cover something in a lecture of 50 minutes or 1 hour, and you want to cover a particular topic, it is absolutely essential for you to be able to convey what you want to convey to the students in that specified period. So these 4 activities are the primary requirements of any academic. Now the next question, since we are talking about the concept of sustainability, I asked myself a question a few years ago: what is my objective as a teacher? In addition to these 4, but when I retire or when I hang my boots and somebody asked me, what have you achieved in life? To be honest with you, 10 years ago I did not have an answer to that question. But it got me thinking. Then I realized that there is a simple answer to this particular question. I said 10 years ago that by the time I retire or by the time I hang my boots, I want to produce engineers who will contribute to the tune of 10,000 crores to the GDP. Full stop. Period. In whatever way, but fortunately, unfortunately, every year I have been revising that estimate from 10,000 crores, and today it's 30,000 crores. So I continue, as long as I am working, I am continuing to revise that particular target, and that itself gives you a path of sustainability. Now sustainability is a sort of a buzzword. Good, it is extremely important, but sustainability gets defined the period. What is that particular period? Now if you ask that period to different people, you will get different answers. If you ask a daily wage laborer, what is the concept of sustainability? He will say, आज का खाना मिल जाएगा, कल का provision हो जाएगा. I have sustained myself for 2 days, I am happy. That is my period of sustainability. If you go to a regular employer, तो आज का महीना निकल जाएगा, ठीक है, जितना सैलरी मुझे मिल रहा है, 1 महीने का सैलरी में, if I am able to sustain myself, that is my period of sustainability. You go and ask this question to a CEO. CEO will say, Chief Executive Officer of an industry, CEO will say, 1 quarter. I want to show I am able to have a progress in 4 months' time or 3 months' time, 1 quarter, because if I don't show that particular progress, I am not sure about my position in the next quarter. So if you have a sustainability questions asked, and of course, you can keep on asking these questions to different people and you'll keep on getting different answers. If you ask the same question to, let's say, current government, oh, agla election tak mere ko sustain karna hai. Right? I need to do something for the next 5 years so that I get elected again. So this concept of sustainability has different time scales and we must keep those in mind. Whereas we industries are concerned or industrialists are concerned, what is in reality, what is the time scale which we are talking about? The time scales which we are talking about are typically, if you look at any past history or past kingdoms and the duration over which these kingdoms have survived, thrived, and anybody from biology, biochemistry, microbiology background, anybody at least know what the typical growth curves which you see in the case of biological systems? The growth curve typically is an S-shaped curve. On the y-axis, you have number of microbes. On the x-axis, you have a time scale. So initially, when you put a culture, let's say you are preparing curd, dahi, you put a small quantity initially till the microbes get acclimatized and used to the new surroundings. They are trying to figure out which enzymes to synthesize, how to digest the milk sugar and grow, and that is a lag period. Slowly it is increasing. Then there is an exponential growth. In the exponential growth period, they keep on multiplying. And then there is a stationary phase. Stationary phase means what? Microbes realize now the substrates, the sugar is getting exhausted. I must do something about it. So let me conserve myself. Let me go into hibernation. So they will stay out there for some time. And the last phase is catabolism, which is the death. It says survival of the fittest. Stronger microorganisms will start using the weaker microorganisms as a food and will keep on surviving themselves. Earth as an entity can also be shown to follow this S-curve. Right? And where are we at present? We are in our exponential growth phase. As you can see, every industry, every country talks only about growth in GDP. India revised from 7.4% to 7%, next year 6.7%. We should get 8%, 10%, 12%. And you see what has happened to China when they maintained that growth rate of 10 or 12% for the past decade. What has happened? So real effect of sustainability or a definition of sustainability is using resources without compromising the future generation. The availability of the resources for the future generation cannot be compromised by using resources in the current generation, because future generation does not have any say in how you do and what you do, how effectively you are using it, how efficiently you are using it, because they are not born yet. So we must take care of that particular issue and consider the requirements of future generation. There is a concept which is called as an Earth Overshoot Day. Has anybody heard of this concept? Read anything about Earth Overshoot Day? Earth Overshoot Day is the day on which, as a nation, you consume resources, which is a percentage of resources which you will be able to renew in a period of 1 year, depending upon your land mass which you occupy. For example, if I take a country from the Middle East, say United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, the Earth Overshoot Day is probably 10th of January or so. Meaning what? the resources which they are going to use or which they are going to generate in 1 year based on the incident energy from solar radiations, they would have used those resources in 10 days itself. So they are borrowing from future and using it today. India, till our industrial development, so-called development, which started getting promoted in 1992, our overshoot day was hovering around 25th or 27th of December. Meaning what? We were living life much more sustainably then as compared to now. Before the pandemic, our overshoot day was 7th of July. That means we would consume resources which would get generated in 1 year in 7 months itself. So we are borrowing it from next year, so on and so forth. 2 months of shutdown, the first shutdown during pandemic, you might have heard stories and pictures from WhatsApp, how clean the environment has become. You can see Himalayan peaks from Delhi. Fish, dolphins have started coming out in Mumbai harbor, so on and so forth. What it clearly indicated that in 2 months of stoppage in the industrial production was capable of reviving, the nature was capable of reviving the 70 years or 30 years of abuse in 2 months. You can imagine if that 2 months of lost production was distributed over 30 years, the effect could have been insignificant. You realize this fact? But is it really important for us to keep growing all the time? Are there any limits to the growth? Not there. And when you are in exponential phase, you don't realize it. It's an example which we always give. Imagine you're sitting on the bank of a pond, and in that pond there is a lotus which grows twice its size every day. On the 50th day, it covers the entire pond, so the water is not visible. On the 49th day, it is covering only 50% of the pond. And you don't realize it till the 50th day arrives that you are sitting or facing a situation from tomorrow onwards, nothing is going to be available, no water is going to be available. We are currently in that situation. I'm sorry to say that, but the importance of sustainability cannot be overemphasized ever. And it is important for us to look at it. So where do we start? How do we make this particular judgment first? We are engineers, so we don't sort of speculate. We are not fortune tellers. To be able to have a specific, predictable information or suggestions, we need data. And this is where the first exercise which we carried out, one of my Ph.D. students did this particular work, which I am using in this particular presentation, is how we have been effective in terms of using all our resources. And we have been told right from our school days that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Mass cannot be created nor destroyed. The only thing which may happen is energy may get converted into mass and mass may get converted into energy. E is equal to mc square. Right? They are interchangeable. Imagine Earth as an entity which is completely isolated with no other input coming in except the sunlight. So the energy which is there on Earth is going to remain there. Where is it going to go? So thermodynamics, first law of thermodynamics tells me that energy cannot be destroyed, mass cannot be destroyed, it can only be interchanged. So what are we so worried about? So if we are worried about the usage of energy and water, these are the only two major inputs which an industry needs to sustain, to survive, or for that matter, for us also, these are the only two inputs which we require. Now, if energy cannot be destroyed, if mass cannot be destroyed, what are we so worried about? The question is, can that energy be used? And that is why we need to introduce and understand the concept of second law of thermodynamics. Rather than defining energy, we need to define now exergy. And that is where this word exergy analysis comes into picture. So rather than doing energy balance, we do exergy balance. And I will come back to this in different forms of exergies. Every material, exergy can be defined for that. The units of exergy are exactly the same as units of energy. That is, units of enthalpy, kilocalories. So enthalpy units and exergy units are exactly the same. And keeping this particular thing in mind, can we look at our own country and see past 4 decades of its resource utilization and move and understand where we are? So if energy cannot be destroyed, mass cannot be destroyed, created, what gets destroyed? Exergy can get destroyed. Right? So the limiting quantity on this particular earth is exergy, not energy. I'll give you a simple example. Imagine you have got 10 lakh kilocalories of energy. Now this energy is available in the form of a hot water. Atmospheric temperature is 30 degrees centigrade and your datum is 0 degrees centigrade, and the enthalpy, 10 lakh kilocalories of enthalpy which is available to you at water having 31 degrees centigrade temperature, how much energy you can actually put to use? The gradient available to you is 1 degree centigrade. To be able to extract that particular energy with known mechanical energy transformation techniques, it is not possible. So even though you have that energy, it has practically zero exergy. The usable part of energy in simple terms is defined as exergy. Have I made myself clear? So all the resources which we have used or which we plan to use in due course of time or which we are currently using needs to be analyzed in terms of exergy, not energy. Now something more can also be talked about. If I get a chance, I will discuss that as well. Earlier, those who work in the area of energy, the energy used to be described in terms of coal equivalent. So many kgs or tons of coal equivalent, assuming a certain calorific value for the coal. Then when the oil economy came into picture, they said barrels of oil equivalent. Now the next concept is in terms of equivalence of solar energy incident on earth. Now that unit is now defined in terms of emergy. So we have learned now 3 terms today. One term is known to you, energy. Second term is exergy. And third term, which I'll refer to at some point of time, is emergy in terms of solar incident energy equivalent. And if you look at most of the industrial operations, or I would say anthropogenic operations, the transformation is at least 10 to the power 6 or 10 to the power 7 orders of magnitude lower. Meaning, if I have an incident energy of 10 to the power 7 kilocalories per unit time or watts in terms of solar incident energy, I can use 10 watts of energy. From 10 to the power 7 to 10. So 6 orders of magnitude decrease. Now we can safely say that at least during our lifetime, sun is going to be there, and it will keep on radiating at the same energy. We are going to stay out there. So at least what we need to do is the sustainability period which we are talking about, based on the history, is at least for 150 to 200 years. We must plan something in terms of resource utilization for the next 150 to 200 years. And that's the typical lifetime of any kingdom. You look at any history and you'll find that that is a typical range which is there. Increasing population, economic growth, diminishing fossil fuel resources, overwhelming concerns about environmental emissions made the choice of energy mix for a society a tough job. There are a number of statements out here. If you differ or if you have any questions about the statements which I am going to indicate here, feel free to ask. From the thermodynamic assessment of national economies, it was found that majority, that is 80 to 95% of high quality diminishing natural resources are wasted. That means if we use energy very efficiently. No doubt about it. You take an electric geyser, you're using electricity to get hot water with 97-98% efficiency. Whatever wattage which you are given appears in the form of hot water. So in terms of first law analysis, thermodynamics first law of analysis, in terms of energy efficiency, electric geyser is 97-98% efficient. But in the process, how much exergy you have destroyed. And you will find, if you do the analysis, our electric geyser work with exergy efficiency of not more than 4%. That means 96% of good energy, energy of highest quality. So exergy can also be considered as quality of energy, not only the quantity but quality of energy. 96% of the energy gets wasted, exergy gets wasted. What is the alternative? If you want to really live it sustainably, what? Because if you look at it, you've got a fuel, you burn the fuel, extract the heat, you generate steam, use the steam, run the steam turbine, connect it to an alternator. So the efficiencies which you have of converting thermal energy into electrical energy will be about 40%. So you already 60% of the exergy is lost, which you could have used it for something else. Electricity is considered as the highest form of energy because it can be used for anything. But converting the sources of energy into usable part of energy is what we should be worried about. Is that concept clear? And what is the difference between exergy and energy and how the efficiencies are different? It also tells me something about it. When we make a product in terms of thermodynamics second law, what are we trying to do? We are collecting disordered system where they are collected and distributed throughout the environment. I collect some minerals from here, I collect some chemicals from here, I collect some ores from here and make a product. From a disordered resources, I am trying to make an ordered material which is a product. Am I right in saying that? Defined? Now if you are trying to bring in an order from disorder, disorder somewhere else has to increase. But thermodynamics doesn't allow the disorder to decrease. Entropy must increase. That means disorder somewhere else has to increase. Where is it increasing? Think about it. And you can see it in front of you. The disorder manifests itself in terms of environmental disasters, unpredictable environmental disasters. All these flash floods, droughts, heavy rains, which were not so frequent previously, before the so-called industrial revolution became a buzzword, but now it is become so frequent That cannot be ignored very easily. So if you are trying to bring in order from disorder resources, disorder somewhere else has to increase, and that disorder manifests itself in the form of disasters. The environment is trying to rectify that, trying to correct that particular ordered material by increasing disorder somewhere else. You see the floods, the kind of earthquakes and droughts, the kind of melting of glaciers, whatever you take it, it is essentially manifesting itself in terms of increased disorder in the rest of the environment. So this is what thermodynamics tells me. So in principle, you cannot defeat the second law of thermodynamics. Right? We are all engineers, we understand what the thermodynamic laws tell us, and this is what I want to correlate. So efficiency improvement is an important part of managing the environmental impact of emissions associated with the resource consumption. There's another issue which needs to be looked at. This is called as Joanne's paradox. This typically happened in 1970s when suddenly the oil prices shot up. Right? You were getting crude oil at some price, and then suddenly all the OPEC countries decided to jack up the oil prices, and there was a first oil shock, so-called oil cost shock. So people started looking at it and said, how can we counter this particular shock? We must reduce the consumption of gasoline. Started in US, of course. And then Joanne came up with a particular theory. All the automobiles started working on improvement in the car efficiencies. The car which was running, let's say, 10 miles to a gallon, suddenly the car with an improvement in engine efficiencies started running 40 miles a gallon. What was the result? The objective was, because it is now running 40 miles a gallon, people will use lesser of oil and the impact of the increased oil prices will be reduced. What is the net result? Because the efficiencies were increased, people started traveling more. So the impact, you do something to improve the efficiencies, resulted into something which actually increased the consumption. This is what is paradoxical, and that's why it is called as Joanne's paradox. So while improving the efficiency of any process, you got to keep this thing also in mind, that you might not encounter, or you might be in a position to encounter a paradoxical situation that you aim and attempt something, industry will be very happy. Why industry will be happy? Because their bottom line is going to increase, their consumption is going to increase, there is going to be a growth, but not good for sustainability. I am not against industry, right? I am all for growth. So there is a balance which needs to be done in terms of progress and nature, pragati and prakriti. You have to have a balance between the two. Have I made my basic philosophy clear? So let us run through these particular slides, and I'll try to elaborate quantitatively, because as an engineer I cannot be just talking about philosophy all the time. I need to provide with some numbers to you so that whatever argument which I have made, those arguments are convincing enough for you. So let's move on. So the motivation is increasingly important to understand the mechanism of destruction. During at least my school days, we did not have a subject in our school called EVS, Environmental Studies, because we were there with the... Now it's the reverse situation. People sit in front of their laptop or a computer or a mobile, and they need to be told, go out, be in nature. And because they still don't do, you introduce a subject in the syllabus called environmental studies. What it is trying to tell again is, the more you move away from nature, more unsustainable our living is. We all essentially come from villages. We go and occupy cities, and we start translating and expecting whatever we are doing Same thing in the cities, but our wastage increases. Because now it is available easily. You would keep on recycling things. If you are in a village, you would not throw anything out. But here, when you translocate yourself or relocate yourself from village to a city, essentially you are moving away from more sustainable living to unsustainable living. So don't just give them job. Encourage them to go back to their native places where they have come from. Use their engineering skills and make them use those skills to improve their local environment. If you combine that, then you are actually teaching sustainable living. This is what my suggestion would be. So, contribution of this work, first attempt to analyze the complex flow of resource in various sectors of India using thermodynamic exergy analysis, pinpointing the areas of major inefficiencies that destroys the useful resource. That means we are talking about not the destruction or wastage of energy, we are talking about destruction of exergy. More exergy destruction, more unsustainable the process is. So if we are in a position to identify which are the operations which are destroying maximum exergy, those operations needs to be concentrated on, and that is why the reduction in the exergy or destruction in the exergy can be reduced. Comparison with other studies on resource assessment using exergy analysis gives us where do we stand and how we progressed compared to the rest of the world. The last part I am not going to talk about because the municipal solid waste, which again UPL is very heavily involved in, is one particular case study which I had taken. If we get time, I'll talk about it, but the basic analysis remains exactly the same. Municipal solid waste also works as a resource. If we are talking about 100 years in future, and all these landfill sites which BEL promotes and manages, in the Netherlands, these landfill sites are also managed with 150-year horizon. Meaning what? Wastage, a solid waste which is coming from one particular type of industry having one particular, let's say, metallic salt, will be allowed to dump at one specific location. Why it is going as a waste? Because currently it is not economically viable to recover that metal from it. 150 years down the line, the prices would have increased and you will be more than happy to recover that particular metal from that. So these dumping sites, 100 years, 150 years down the line, will act as artificial mines which can be mined to recover the resources. So municipal solid waste, dumping sites needs to be looked as future resources. That's also a way to look at sustainability angle. So on and so forth. In industry sector, transport sector, residential and commercial sector, and agricultural sector, right? This is where the maximum utilization. The rest of the thing becomes repetitive. So India is among the world's largest energy consumer society, accounting for about 3.5%, even though our population is 16% of the world population. We use only 3.5% of the resources. If you look at other developed countries such as US, 5% of the population using 25% of the resources, and Europe is no different. Physical growth and environmental impact should be considered together. Studies of national metabolism, if Earth as a whole can be equated with the S-shaped curve of a biological system, even the nation can be treated as a living entity, and you can do the analysis exactly in the same fashion. So these are the references from where I have picked up this information, and demonstrate current low thermodynamic efficiency needs significant improvement. And how does India compare with the rest of the world? I will talk about that as well. Understand India's metabolism over the last 4 decades and its implication. quantify the trends in resource consumption in terms of exergy analysis, not energy analysis. Energy gets converted into exergy. I'll give you the definitions of how one can estimate exergy. Calculate where the maximum improvement is required. Right? Maximum improvement in terms of reduction in the exergy destruction. Which are the areas where maximum improvement is possible? Now resource, fuel or non-fuel, if it is ores or whatever it is, each of that resource can be expressed in terms of exergy. So there is a physical exergy, there is a chemical exergy, there is a potential exergy, and there is a kinetic exergy. So all these can be measured, can be categorized, can be analyzed, and you do very similar to do your energy balance. Chemical engineers are masters of energy and material balance. So here, following the same principles, you try to do exergy balance. So from quantities of mass flow, energy and exergy values have been calculated. And this is where I got all the information. This information, nothing I have done, but it is based on the statistical data which is available. Ministry of Statistics, Ministry of Power, Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry of Mines and Minerals. You can imagine this took 4 years. So having, even though we say that data is available, accessing that data, sifting through that data, analyzing that data is indeed a humongous task. These are the definitions of exergy. So exergy, as you can see from here, total exergy. Now, usable part of energy. Simple words, usable part of energy is simply termed as exergy. Because every utilization is bringing the system back to equilibrium with the environment. When you have system in equilibrium with the environment, you can't extract anything. You have to have a gradient to be able to use that energy. Okay? Right? And this, so a maximum amount of work that can be done by a subsystem as it approaches thermodynamic equilibrium with the surroundings by sequence of reversible processes. Always defined with respect to reference environment. So, if that 31 degrees centigrade hot water was available, but it is available in a country where the atmospheric temperature is 5 degrees centigrade, yes, significant amount of exergy is available. In India, probably I won't be able to use it. And that's why it is with respect to the environment. It is defined with respect to the environment. Right? Exergy is thus the ultimate limiting resource. Not the energy, not the material, but exergy. Right? Is not conserved in real irreversible processes. Exergy losses will result in generation of waste and hence the increase in entropy. I explained to you the logic. You are bringing order from disorder, so disorder has to increase somewhere else, which manifests itself in a form which are unwanted, revealing whether or not how much it's possible to design more efficient energy systems by reducing the inefficiencies in the existing system, keeping Joanne's paradox in mind. Right? We must not do something which will in fact increase the consumption because of the increased efficiency. This has also happened, right? At least in automobile sector it has happened, definitely. So physical exergy, as I said, it's essentially thermal, difference in the enthalpy, difference in the temperature gradient. Thermal exergy QR 1 minus TO, T reference, that is what is the actual system temperature and the surrounding temperature. Chemical exergy is what we chemical engineers do or chemists do in terms of free energy of reaction. Whether it's exothermic, endothermic, that's the chemical exergy which is present in that particular chemical. Why exergy? So energy utilization does not provide a true picture, which I have already explained it to you. So natural resources are traditionally divided into energy resources and other resources. Now this distinction is not very meaningful. Other resources also have exergy, and to convert that other resources into usable form, you are destroying certain exergy. That is bringing order from disorder. Right? So exergy is essentially a concept associated with the entropy. So wood materials and crude oil energy, it would be more appropriate to consider these resources together. You cannot look at it in isolation. Important knowledge and understanding can be gained and areas identified where large improvements could be obtained by applying efficient technologies. While the nations which follow the path of lower theoretical second law thermodynamic efficiencies for resource conversion will face the problem of energy scarcity sooner or later because they are destroying that exergy. Right? So that is the limiting or a sustainable parameter. You have hydroelectric power, you have thermal power, you have nuclear power, you have wind power, tidal power, you name it, and different powers are being utilized. So look at it. This is typically coal. Total electricity generation, and what is happening is electricity generation is going up, green, and what is decreasing is hydro is decreasing. Right? Even though, which is really sad, because if you look at the exergy destruction for all this in a subsequent slide, which you will be able to see that. So this has remained more or less stationary, right? This has marginally increased natural gas-based turbines, gas, a combined cycle, gas turbine and subsequent steam generation-based electricity generation has increased, which gives you an overall efficiency about 52% from 40%, because the two-stage, and we still rely heavily on coal as far as electricity generation is concerned. So in this you have utility sector, largest electricity generating, sixth largest during whatever these numbers, forget about these numbers. So the total electrification rate is only 44%. Now it has significantly increased because this data is a bit dated. I don't have the latest data. In the year 2008, per capita electricity consumption in India was 566 kilowatt hour annum, which is about 24% of, so about 1/5 of what is being utilized. But you multiply it by 16% of the population as against 5, and then that number becomes significantly large. Same is with China. So this is exergy utilization, exergy consumption in electricity generation, and the units here are petajoules, 10 to the power 15, right, 10 to the power 15. Exergy consumption in coal, really high. You look at all others, hydro, natural gas, diesel, light diesel oil, these are essentially using diesel generation sets for the generation of electricity, furnace oil, somewhere here, right, only a fraction. So exergy efficiency, now look at this is most important. Which gives you highest exergy efficiency? Hydro. Right? Whereas you see where we are increasing, natural gas. Natural gas also, because now you are combining these cycles, natural gas, gas turbine followed by steam turbine using the high temperature flue gases coming out of the gas turbine, and then using that energy to have high pressure, medium pressure, low pressure turbines, and then each connected to an alternative cogeneration. So investment does go up. So capex goes up, but overall apex substantially comes down. Okay? So this is what is indicated. Now, the last concept which I'll talk, rest of the things I'll run very quickly because everywhere it is exactly a similar way. And I'll just highlight what I want you to look at. The way to express this particular analysis is what we call as a Grassman diagram or a Sankey diagram. Right? Grassman diagram or a Sankey diagram. Sankey was a French general and he was known to be a brilliant military strategist. So he would allocate resources in such a way that there is a minimum destruction of his resource, which is essentially a manpower fighting that particular war, compared to somebody else. So all these resource analysis can also be expressed using Grassman or a Sankey diagram, and this is one example of that. These are the inputs, This is the way electricity is generated, and this is where actual useful work and the rejected exergy. Meaning what? The exergy which cannot be utilized. If you look at, if you add 4982, 2927, put both these two and find out the percentage utilization, that works out to be 37-38% or so. Is that clear? So you can go on doing this analysis for different sectors, the 5 sectors which we talked about. Utility sector, industry sectors, trends of resource consumption, fossil fuel, electricity consumption in industries, heating, lighting, mechanical drive applications. Heating processes for each industry are grouped into low, medium and high temperature categories. Right? Exergy efficiencies at these are different. Now why government is promoting supercritical power plants in thermal power plants? The whole objective is it has got higher exergy efficiency. And not energy efficiency, higher exergy efficiencies. Because you are generating temperatures which are very near to what the final temperature which you are capable of achieving. Similarly, as Mr. Gadia will probably talk about later on, if you generate solar power, solar thermal, the highest temperature which you get is going to be better for you in terms of exergy efficiency. Lower temperatures, okay, you can use thermal power, solar thermal power to get morning hot water for bath, but that's about it, but nothing more than that. You can't use this for movement or drive-based applications. For that you require significantly higher quality of energy. Industry sector, similarly, exergy, usage, and you see what it is. Again, coal. Now this is 2009-10. Now you see most of the industries are shifting from coal to briquettes, but availability of the briquettes so another. Now briquettes, renewable source, obviously the exergy efficiencies of that are going to be significantly higher. Right? So the moment you shift from anything which is renewable, like hydroelectric power, because you are storing the rainwater at an elevation and using the potential energy to generate electricity, the same thing will continue here as well. And as far as natural gas, again, usage, same thing can be converted into exergy efficiencies. You will find which gives you highest exergy efficiencies are iron and steel industry, cement, followed by cement. Chemicals and petrochemicals are slowly catching up. Right? But look at it in the earlier days. They were only bothered about making chemicals. Right? Not bothered about exergy destruction, so on and so forth. But realization of sustainability has made them improve their processes, improve their efficiencies. Now, in addition to the growth, you would find that you go to any industry, you will have tables or graphs showing what is the energy per ton of product made and how much improvement it has made. Just a second. Give me a minute, sorry about this. I usually put it on silent mode. Forgot this time. Yeah. So let's move on to the next industry sector. So this is the resource intensity in industries, total exergy consumed and how it is growing up year by year. Now here it grew and then went down in terms of total exergy and resource intensity per ton of cement industry. Steel and cement, how? I mean it has shown a significant improvement or remained. These are one of the most mature technologies and the scale of operation is extremely important. So when you use energy to cook food, let's say for example, if you cook food for one person, you use per kg of food cooked much more as compared to when you cook food for 100 people. Economy of scale, which also helps in understanding the reduction in the energy. So larger and larger plants are going to be better and better energy efficient and better in terms of reduction in the exergy destruction. So you do an industry sector, a similar analysis. You see out here, 2281, 2869. Right? About 40, 45, 50%. Nice, good. But there is an opportunity. Look at this and then you will understand where the opportunities exist. So this analysis essentially providing you the possible opportunities on which you can work, improve to concentrate on the reduced exergy destruction. Transport sector, this is a disaster actually. Increased vehicular density, look at it. India economy. Transport diesel is increasing, and that's why you'll find that electrification of locomotives or trains is taken up on a priority basis, and that will definitely help. What are the exergy efficiencies? 21-22%. So 78% of the useful energy is just wasted. What's an alternative? No, not bullock cart. Not bullock cart. If we learn from industry experience that larger scale is improving my energy efficiencies, public transport. And that is why I think if you look at Mumbai Metro, which will come, Mumbai Metro, they did an analysis the other day that if Mumbai Metro was not there, then to do carbon sequestration corresponding to the vehicular traffic in Mumbai, you would have had to plant 20 crores of trees. Where is the space in Mumbai to plant 20 crores of trees? If Mumbai Metro was not there. So all those people who complain about RA shed and 20 trees were cut down and we are going to protect these particular trees, they are not looking at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is far scary as compared to what they are not able to see that. Transport sector, you see, again when you look at it, 1584, 473, again 22% or so, total quantity. Residential and commercial sector, again household energy consumption has increased and now slowly going down, and different forms of energy, biofuels, kerosene, LPG, electricity. For that matter, India actually is extremely efficient that way. Why? Because 70% of the population still live in rural areas. They still do not rely on commercial fuels such as kerosene, LPG, even though Ujala has promoted the gas, but still that percentage is insignificant, and the major fuel which is being used for their daily requirement is biofuel, which is renewable. The more we stay with nature, in association with nature, that is the way to live sustainably. Right? Here you see again, residential and commercial are pathetic in terms of overall destruction of energy which we actually indulge into. Agricultural sector, again you see diesel. Why? The pumps, right, which are irrigating the farms or irrigating the fields. Unreliable electricity, वो पंप चालू करके रख दो, जब आएगा तब पंप चालू हो जाएगा, पानी आते जाएगा, जब इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जाएगा, whether the field requires that much water or not, on one hand you are wasting electricity, on other hand you are wasting water. So now you have compulsory solar pumps. At the most it will run for 6 hours, no storage. So when the sun is out, pump is on, sun is out, pump is stopped. These are the kind of techniques which government is also promoting, but they are promoting it from a different angle, but we as engineers should be in a position to understand what it is actually serving. Okay? Right, so agriculture sector, exergy efficiencies are very good, right? Till about 95, 96, and then suddenly exergy efficiencies decrease. Why that? mechanized farming. From labor-intensive farming, we shifted to mechanized farming. Right? It has destroyed the exergy efficiencies which we were traditionally able to achieve earlier. See, but still it is not that bad comparable to others. So if you consider all the things put together, this is what the Sankey diagram or Grassman diagram tells us. Now it tells us how or which are the areas where these exergy efficiencies can be significantly improved. How do we compare with others? So if you see here, exergy per GDP, we were quite reasonable in a period till 98-99, and then it started decreasing because we only concentrated on growth. 8%, 10% GDP. Forget about environment. We wanted to have a growth all the time. That is not sustainable. That is definitely not sustainable. Comparison with other societies. So look where we are. Percentage share of coal exergy and the total exergy consumed. India is still somewhere here, 40%. The majority of the people have reduced the consumption of coal. Maybe with the Ukraine crisis and the non-availability of gas and oil coming from Russia, many thermal power plants which were coal-based power plants are getting revived now. So this will again go up in terms of consumption of exergy utilized from coal. So percentage share of crude oil exergy, so coal, crude oil, then natural gas. UK of course is heavily relying on natural gas. Right? Comparison CO2 emissions. See, India is here. China is here, it has overtaken. This is old, so if you compare it today, China has overtaken us because in the past 10 years, China had a significantly higher growth rate, but if you compare it now, it is not the case. Okay? And that's why I said data is a bit dated. So India is following a traditional development path with heavy dependence on fossil fuel, which needs to be looked at. Exergy analysis has been found to be the most appropriate measure for resource assessment. Residential sector, 13%, is the least exergy efficient, followed by transport and the utility sector. Improvement in the thermodynamic exergy efficiency in the residential, transport and electricity generation sector of India can be seen as an immediate necessary step for future energy policy changes for the country. Coal-fueled thermal power station is the largest contributor to total CO2 emissions. Average exergy efficiency for electricity generation has continued to decrease with increased share of coal-fueled thermal power station in India. The exergy utilization efficiency values for various industries in India are obtained and are found to be in the range of about 24 to 45%. I'm just concluding and summing up. Result shows that more than 80% of the high quality energy extracted from the earth is wasted. Decrease in the exergy intensity, petajoules per rupee, over the last decade provides hope for greater efficiency. I would like to acknowledge all this and also would like to thank all of you for very patient hearing, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions or queries which you may have. Thank you.